Let's see. Okay, seems like that's working. Perfect. I'm always a little sad when I start screen sharing because then I can only see a few people at a time, but oh well. Hmm. Morning, Stephanie. Hi, Leanne.
Good morning.
Nice to see you all today. Hopefully everybody's got a warm drink to settle in with. I'll mention this when we get started as well, but just a heads up that Cornelia is going to join about 15 minutes late today. So I'm going to just kind of get us moving and then she'll take over as soon as she joins so that you're not surprised when I start talking here in a couple minutes. Morning, Natalie. Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to see you all today. I'm glad we could all be here together for the Early Childhood Recommendations panel. This is Friday, November 15th, and we're jumping in and getting started with the meeting. Just as a heads up to everyone, my name is Lindsay O'Ryan. I work at the KU Center for Public Partnerships and Research. I help to support the coordination of the panel. I send all the emails to all of our panel members and make sure everything gets posted on the website, along with my colleague, Brianna Houston, who's here with me today, who also helps to support this wonderful group. Our chair, Cornelia Stevens, is going to be joining a few minutes late due to a conflict that overlaps first thing this morning, but she'll be joining us soon. So my role is just to kind of get us moving and hold the space until she joins. So thank you, as always, for serving Kansas children and families. We know that we have such a diverse group on the Early Childhood Recommendations panel, touching all different parts of the Kansas early childhood ecosystem. And really, none of this would happen without all of us working together. So we're really thankful to everything that you do, as well as others in your communities and all across Kansas. As usual, this is a remote meeting, so all of our materials are available on the Children's Cabinet website, including past recordings and anything that you might want to access. We do ask panel members just to make sure that we are identifying ourselves when speaking. We may have people joining who aren't able to see the screen, so it's helpful to hear voices and hear as much description as possible. You can always use the raise hand feature if you are wanting to come off mute, but we definitely encourage you to always plan to come off mute and share directly. Today's agenda matches what everyone should have received by email. We will do our normal beginning of meeting things with the agenda and the previous month's minutes. We'll remind everyone about the opportunity for the Kansas Open Forum, although we do not have any speakers identified for today. My colleague Sarah Gardner is joining to share an update on All In for Kansas Kids strategic plan progress. Hasn't been that long since we've heard from Sarah, but we want to make sure we keep in touch along the way and keep checking in on opportunities to engage with that work. John Wilson from Kansas Action for Children will join us to share some information about how to engage and understand the Kansas legislature so that we're approaching the legislative season and you'll all have an opportunity to hopefully learn a little bit more about different aspects of that and how to be involved. John will also be joining a little bit late, so I will beg a little bit of flexibility this morning with our agenda. We might jump around a little to make sure that we hopefully are still able to have him join us today. If for some reason his conflict, last minute conflict this morning does preclude him from being able to join us before we go to work group time, we will make sure to bring him back at a future date, but I'm really hopeful that it will work out. So I appreciate your flexibility. We will have our work group reports, so hopefully everyone is prepared to share some updates on what's been happening over the past month and from your meetings, your connections that happened at our last panel meeting in October. Be thinking about bright spots. We definitely will have some time at the end of the meeting, bright spots or anything that would be just good or helpful to share with other panel members or the system. There's a lot of work happening, so hopefully we'll get to hear about a few things that are happening around the state. We will adjourn and then open up space for our work groups to meet following the formal part of our meeting. So that's the plan for today. The first thing that I'll ask for is for someone to please make a motion to approve our November agenda.
This is Kathy Gray, and I make a motion that we approve the November agenda.
Thank you, Kathy. Do we have a second?
This is Hillary Kane. I'll second.
Thank you, Hillary. All right, so all in favor, you can raise your hand or give a thumbs up to approve the November agenda. Perfect. Opposed, same sign, but I'll give a second for hands to go down. Wonderful. Our November agenda is set again with the caveat that we'll have to be a little bit flexible today. Next up, we have our October meeting minutes. Brianna does a great job to try to give a really good and detailed summary from our meeting. So if you ever miss a meeting, in addition to watching the recording, you can also do a scan of our meeting minutes, and hopefully that'll be a helpful resource for you to look back on. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review. I did not receive any emails for updates or changes, so I feel like they should be in pretty good shape. But if everyone agrees, I would love a motion to approve our October minutes.
This is Maritas. I move to approve our October minutes.
Thank you, Maritas. Do we have a second?
This is Tanya Kane. I'll second.
Thank you, Tanya. All right, so all in favor to approve our October minutes, hand up or thumbs up. Fantastic. And opposed, same sign. Wonderful. Thank you for helping us get through those action items. As a reminder, our Kansans Open Forum is an opportunity for anyone across the state to connect with the Early Childhood Recommendations Panel, to share thoughts, ideas, concerns. Please make sure that if you have others in your community or your organizations, in addition to connecting to you directly as panel members, that you share this opportunity with others as well. Anyone watching our live stream or our recording, please know that this opportunity is open to anyone, and you can share feedback, comments, and you can also request some time to come on and share verbal comments for a few minutes at a panel meeting. There's a form that is linked on the website and on this slide deck as well. So you can find that and share your information. And that goes to me. So I keep an eye out for those, and I will be in touch with anybody who reaches out. All right, so next up we have Sarah Gardner from KUCPPR for our strategic plan progress update. Good morning, Sarah. We're happy to have you here.
Thank you, Lindsay. Hi, everyone. Good to see you all this morning. We can go to the next slide, Lindsay. I just have one slide for you guys today, and would welcome your feedback on how frequent you want to hear this kind of update. So the TLDR, the too long don't read version, is there isn't a whole lot of an update to share. So just want to kind of walk through a couple things, and then also give you guys a chance to ask some questions or even offer some ideas about things that we could focus on. So the first thing is just the plan home. So I think I've shared this before, but the allinforkansaskids.org website has a home for the strategic plan, and all of the tracking and monitoring and progress updates and all the things that we might produce related to the plan are going to be on this site. Lindsay, can I share my screen?
Absolutely. Feel free to take it over.
Okay. That's a little bit dangerous. But yeah. So this is the allinforkansaskids.org. I'll actually just go to this real quick, go to the homepage. So if you click on All In for Kansas Kids, type it into your Internet Explorer, this is what comes up, and you're going to scroll over here to the About tab, and you can click on About, or you can just hover over it and you'll see Strategic Plan. You'll click on Strategic Plan. And this is where all the information is going to live. So this will become the home for all the things. We've got it organized so you can quickly jump through the pillars as well as the pathways to action section. We envision that underneath these tabs here, which just kind of toggle between, are going to be the places where we share progress updates, or we share reporting and monitoring efforts, as well as things you might want to see. So I think we had a request last time I was here to share, like, what are all the data points that are called out in the strategic plan? Can we get that in a one pager? So as you're thinking about things that you might need, or ideas that you have for how we convey the information, break down the big document into smaller bites that mean something to you. Like, not all the actions mean something to you. So how can we give you or package the information in a way that is meaningful to you? This will be the place that that information will live. So just wanted to kind of do that. And Lindsay, we can go back to the PowerPoint. So I wanted to make sure you had that. Hopefully, if you reached out and asked for copies of the plan, that you have received those. We're going to place another big order of printed copies. So if you need more, or if you have partners that need some, please feel free to make those requests in and send those in. One update I will share is last Friday, we had an in-person meeting in Topeka. We invited our state agency, our 4 state agency partners and some of their staff, as well as some of our statewide contractors, to come and have a little bit of a kickoff for the plan. We did some work to align the state agency plans with the strategic plan. So those will be some documents that we'll post snippets of those on the site as well. So that would mean, let's say you are a partner who receives funds from the Kansas State Department of Education, or you're a partner that receives funds from Department for Children and Families. You'll be able to look at these alignment docs and just kind of see, okay, how does this potentially fit into the broader system? So again, just resources at this point, a lot of just stuff to look at, not a lot of progress updates yet. So a couple things to think about as you're contemplating how the work of your organization or the work of you as a panel member and your working group might fit in, is actually identifying some actions and goals that overlap. So we had the group on Friday do this, and no surprise, we had a lot of options to choose from. So I asked each member who was at the meeting on Friday, pick one action in the strategic plan and tell us why you picked it and how you think it aligns with your work. Lots of really great discussion. People interpret the actions in different ways, and that is 100% okay. We want that interpretation. Some of the actions are written a little bit vague so that you can interpret it in a way that aligns with your work. For example, lots of actions relate to family engagement, and that looks very different for different organizations. Some are engaging with parents directly, some are engaging with the kiddo and their mom or dad in a different setting, and some are just doing outreach overall and awareness. So a couple questions to ask yourself: what actions or goals overlap? And then the second question I asked the group is, what do you track or monitor? So Kansas is data rich. We have a lot of data. We have a lot of resources in our state. Some of the challenges we have is people just not knowing, left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing sometimes. And part of the effort behind this plan is to help maybe bridge some of that lack of awareness and bridge that understanding. And so as you think about your work and how it might relate to the plan, what do you track? Do you track services you provide to families? What do you monitor? How do you think about whether or not your services are landing the way that you intend for them to be? So those are just some reflective questions to ask yourself. We are building a structure by which all partners, including governance groups, including those of you here on the panel, can actually tell the system what actions align with your work and what you do track and monitor. So it's again, it's not intended to be a big brother or to be anything where anyone's like monitoring you, but it's just, again, bridging that understanding and awareness so that your work is part of the plan implementation and the plan progress. And so we're going to have a structure by which you can input some of that information as it makes sense to you, as you want to share. And then that information will be conveyed back on the home that I just screen shared with you all. So that's our goal. And we're still trying to figure out what's the non-fire hose approach here with all of this, how to do this in a way that is meaningful and not just a collection of words from everyone, and then how to communicate that back in a way that moves the needle forward. The end goal is for us to say, every quarter, not just what progress are we making on the transaction of the action, but how are we making the Kansas a better place for children, for young children and their families. So ultimately, that is the goal. And getting from monitoring actions to understanding how that ladders up to a better world for Kansas families is really the ultimate goal. So that's what we're working on. You guys will be one of the first groups we bring that back to because, as Lindsay referenced, your diversity and your expertise. So stay tuned for more and always reach out if you have any questions. So thank you, Lindsay. That's all I have.
Thank you, Sarah. Panel members, any questions for Sarah about any of this before she leaves us today? Okay, well, thankfully, Sarah and I work very closely together. So you can always reach out if you need to get in touch with her or any of our other colleagues in the system. I definitely want to make sure that I'm a resource to help get you connected. So if any ideas, thoughts, questions come up, don't hesitate to reach out and we'll help make those connections. Thanks again, Sarah, for the update. We really appreciate it. Next up, we have John Wilson, who I believe I saw join the call, which is wonderful. Yay. Hi, John. Good morning. John is going to be sharing some information about how to understand and engage with our Kansas legislature. So I will turn it over, but continue moving slides for you. And we're so thankful to have you here this morning, John.
Great. Thanks for having me, Lindsay. And this is intimidating because there's quite a few familiar faces on the call who know as much or more than I do about the legislature. So here goes. So I'm thrilled to be here today. John Wilson, President and CEO of Kansas Action for Children, and I'm in my role as President and CEO of Kansas Action for Children. I get the opportunity to advocate for policies that improve the health and well-being of kids and families across lots of issue areas. And I care a lot about the well-being of kids. And I also care equally about helping people see themselves in the legislative process and not let what happens in that building be intimidating. Or I want to make sure that people never feel like they can't belong in the State House. So Lindsay, if you want to move to the first, we can go past that one too. We're gonna talk about the State House because I think I have about 20 minutes, and this is going to be a crash course in understanding the legislature. And to be clear, we're talking about like understanding the structure of the legislature, understanding how it works. This isn't about understanding every decision that the legislature makes because I do not have the insights into why or how they make the decisions that they do. But I can tell you all of us on this call can help them make better decisions when we insert ourselves into the process in all the various ways that we're able to. Thanks, Lindsay. So we're going to cover the who, what, where, when of the legislature. And again, what I want you to take away from this session is more competence about how the legislature works and more confidence to step into it. Because as you can see from this picture of the building, the building is imposing. It's beautiful, but it's also imposing, and it can be intimidating. Wandering around the building, whether with purpose or aimlessly, also can be intimidating too. And I think the process itself, in some ways, feels like it was designed to be only something for special people, for people who have a title or who have certain professional experiences. And I want you to know that that's not the case. I served several terms in the legislature in the House representing the 10th district in Lawrence and rural Douglas County. And so I describe my experience as kind of like having been in the matrix and now I'm out of the matrix, and I can tell you that the matrix exists and how to like navigate the matrix. So let's do that, and we'll save some time for questions at the end. So we're going to start very basic, and I think it is really helpful to start with some basic information because it may not be basic for some folks. The building here, that's the State House. So that's looking at it from the north side of the State House, and those 3 golden doors down there are the visitor entrances for everybody who is not a lawmaker or who doesn't have a badge to get in the building. So you would enter through the visitor center. And then looking at the picture, on the left side is the Senate. So that is the east side of the building. And on the right side is the House. So the west side of the building. And it's kind of somewhere in the middle is where the governor is. So it houses the executive branch and the legislative branch. I can't tell you much more about the architecture of the building. That's where you actually need to go on an official historical society tour. So that's the building itself. And kind of the when of the legislative session, it takes place January through roughly May, and the session kicks off January 13th, 2025, I believe at 2:30 p.m. And what's interesting about this year is it's the beginning of a biennium. So the legislature works on a biennium, which is a 2-year cycle. So we have the elections in even years, and then the biennium begins right after the elections in that next year. And so the biennium means that House members serve that 2-year term. That means bills that are introduced during the first session of a biennium can technically live until the end of the second session of the biennium. So session begins January, and then January to February time period, that's when committees hear bills and work bills, and committees is where the bulk of the work happens in the legislature. Then in February is a time when the respective chambers vote on the bills that were passed out of their committees. March is when bills are referred to and worked in the opposite chamber. So bills that begin in the House go to the Senate, bills that begin in the Senate go to the House. And then April is a time for conference committee, which I'll explain all these in more in depth in a little bit. But that's when chambers work out their differences. And then there's also a legislative break. And April, May is when there's action by the governor to sign bills or veto bills, or there's a third option too. And then the lawmakers come back and can try to override vetoes of bills. And then in May, the session ends. And people go back to doing their work in their regular day jobs, because Kansas is a citizen legislature, meaning we don't have a full-time legislature, and people will go back to various types of jobs. It's I think a benefit to have a citizen legislature, but it can also be frustrating at times because you may lack certain expertise or knowledge among the body. All right, so that's that. Let's look at the who of the legislature. So we're going to do, you're going to see traditional red and blue to signify Republicans and Democrats, but I want to just caution everybody to not think of these as monolithic. There are flavors of Republican, there are flavors of Democrat. Generally speaking, in Kansas, you have conservative Republicans, and then you have moderate Republicans. On the Democratic side, I would say there are fewer or no conservative Democrats. You might have moderate to progressive Democrats. We just had an election. I don't know if anybody knew that. Feels like a year ago, but it was last week. And the election at the federal level and at the state level will have pretty significant consequences on what happens here in Kansas. But we're going to focus on our 165 friends over that direction in the State House. So this is as of yesterday, or no, the day before. I will note I haven't followed up on what the final outcomes are on the Senate race in Leavenworth and involving current Senator Jeff Pittman. So apologize that I just have had other things on my mind. But basically, here's where we stand. In the Kansas House of Representatives, there will be, as of January 13th, there will be 88 Republicans and 37 Democrats, making a total of 125 House members. Every House seat was on the ballot this election. The numbers below that are really important numbers to know. In the House, it takes 63 votes to pass a bill. It's a constitutional majority. What you can likely see is that Republicans can pass legislation without the support of any Democrats. Also, what you can see, that number 84 below the number 37, that's the number of votes needed to override a governor's veto. As you can see, Republicans also have enough votes to override the governor's veto. That's on kind of most situations. But as I mentioned, there are flavors of Republicans and Democrats. And so on certain issues, Republicans may not have enough votes to override the governor's veto. We saw that last year with certain tax plans. We saw that with votes on social issues like transgender issues. But a difference this year is Republicans picked up 3 seats. And so some moderate Republicans who might side with a Democratic governor can still do what they want to do, and there still are likely enough votes. Because what we have seen happen, generally speaking, is the primary process in Kansas weeds out, that's the wrong term, but the primary process generally on the Republican side leads to more conservative lawmakers, and on the Democratic side, generally more progressive lawmakers. So what the candidates we saw in the general election would be more conservative Republicans who won. So that's on the House side. That's on the West side. Admittedly, I have a bias because that's where I served. On the East side, the Kansas Senate, as of January 13th, 2025, there will be 31 Republicans and 9 Democrats. So Democrats lost 2 seats. A similar dynamic. Takes 21 to pass a bill, takes 27 to override a veto. Republicans have the supermajority in the Senate as well. Again, what this means is there is less of an incentive for Republicans to compromise or to, and also the governor has less leverage to make things happen. But again, we can be surprised by certain things. And I think one way that we can be surprised is to weigh in on the issues that we care about, because I think we can't change voting behavior, whether it's on a bill, whether it's in committee, whether it's on a chamber floor, whether it's on an override attempt, whatever it is, we can't change it without lawmakers hearing from people who are impacted by it. Let's move on. So this is just for fun, just to give you a sense of legislative control over the years. We don't need to spend much time on there, but you can see that dotted line for the majority to pass a bill, the veto override thing. So you can see not like functionally not much has changed, but it's just going to make it harder for certain things, depending on what you care about. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Just shows you the Senate as well. I think actually I left off the 2024 number. It's worse. So not worse. That's showing a bias. Republicans have a stronger majority. We can go past that slide. All right. So we can't talk about the who in the legislature just in these high-level abstract numbers. I want to help people understand a little bit of the org chart in the legislature, because that'll help you understand why something is or isn't moving forward. And we're going to go very quick on this. Little disclaimer is that these faces are going to change because between the elections in November and the beginning of the legislative session, lawmakers are going to reconvene in Topeka, and they are going to participate in leadership elections. And leadership elections determine the leadership of both chambers, as well as the which means the chamber at large plus leadership within caucuses. And caucuses are just collections of people with similar identities. So we have Democratic caucus and Republican caucus. So on the House side, the left side, again, the faces are going to, some of the faces are going to change, but let's just focus on the function. And to be clear, there are more leadership positions than what are listed here, but these are some of the most important. The Speaker of the House, Dan Hawkins, important to know about the Speaker. The Speaker appoints all committee chairs. They make committee assignments, and they assign bills to committees. So appointing committee chairs means they get to appoint the people who have quite a bit of power within committees to decide whether or not a bill is heard and moves forward. The committee assignments, I mean, technically the Speaker can make the assignments that they want to make, but they take recommendations from the minority party and appoint those people proportionately to those committees. So whoever is elected the minority leader in the House will work with their members to say who goes where and submit those names to the speaker. And then assigning bills to committee. So in the legislature, when bills are introduced, whether it's by an individual member or by a committee, they all go to the speaker first. And then the speaker kind of plays like a kind of a traffic role. I want this bill to go here. I want this bill to go here. There's nothing that says a health bill can't go to a, transportation committee or whatever it might be. It all depends on the politics of a situation and, where the subject matter expertise is to move a bill forward, or the political support, I guess. The majority leader, an important function of the majority leader is to determine the calendar for floor debate. So that's really important because just because a bill passes out of a committee doesn't mean that is going to be heard by the full chamber, all 125 members who would have an opportunity to amend it and vote on it. So the majority leader has quite a bit of power. And typically the majority leader and the speaker collaborate well with each other. Sometimes that hasn't been the case. Then looking at the minority leader and assistant minority leader, I don't, by the graphic, I don't mean to imply they don't have any responsibilities or powers, but it really is not as significant as the majority party. That's why people always seek to be in the majority. So the minority leader will identify the ranking members for their committees. So the ranking member would be the person from the minority party who is part of committee leadership. And then they will assign people to the various committees. And so that actually is quite a bit of work that happens in December when newly elected lawmakers or returning lawmakers are putting in their requests for assignments. It's probably kind of like a teacher or a principal kind of determining where students go. And it can get political very quickly because some committees have the opportunity for better fundraising than other committees, or some people just feel very passionately about being a voice on a certain committee. So there's a lot of behind the scenes negotiating happening, and a lot of people, similar to maybe a student council election, a lot of people going around right now saying, will you support me for minority leader? Will you support me for majority leader or for House Whip or whatever it might be? By the way, in case you're curious about what kind of the term whip is, whether it's at the federal level or the state level, the whip is a person within a caucus that is designed to like whip people into voting for something, or to do a vote count to understand where the caucus is on something. All right. Senate side, the right side here. Again, some of this will change. But similar setup over here. The Senate president appoints committee chairs, makes committee assignments, assigns bills to committees. Same thing, majority leader determines the floor debate, and similar responsibilities from the minority party. Shall we move on? Great. Okay. And again, this will change as well, but this is just a typical structure. I don't have all the pictures yet for new folks. A typical committee structure is going to have 3 leadership positions: a chair, a vice chair, and a ranking member. The chair and vice chair will always come from the majority party, which historically has been and currently is the Republican Party. And then the ranking member comes from the minority party. Oftentimes, the leadership are people who have a strong interest in the subject area or professional experience in it, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it could be for like, we just literally need somebody on here, or it can be this person wants to learn and grow into this thing, or this works for their schedule, or they just kind of need to do a job on behalf of leadership. All right, and so then you'll see at the bottom there that members of a committee are assigned to kind of proportionate to the number of the people from their political party in the legislature. So you will always see more Republicans on committees in the legislature. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the process. And again, I need disclaimers on every one of these slides, but this is generally how it goes. And it is, I would love to say it's more linear than this, but it's going to be kind of all over the place. You'll notice these, we're going to read these squares top to bottom, left to right, and there's question marks in between. Those question marks kind of signify decision points. So generally speaking, a bill is introduced, and a bill can be introduced by an individual member or a committee. And important to know is when at least I think it's important to know when lawmakers talk about like I wrote a bill, they didn't sit down in front of Word and type a bill out. Lawmakers have ideas for legislation, and then they work with a nonpartisan office in the legislature called the Reviser of Statutes. The Reviser's office is made up of dozens of attorneys, and each of those attorneys over time develop subject matter expertise for various sections of Kansas statutes, so health or tax or transportation, whatever it might be. So a lawmaker will work with a reviser, or a lobbyist can also work with a reviser with approval from a lawmaker. They will work with the reviser, and the reviser is the person that knows how to amend current statute, how to write new stuff, and then they craft the bill, give it to the lawmaker for review, and they're like, yes, that seems to do what I want it to do, and then it's put into the process. So the bill is introduced. Again, the decision point is the Speaker or the Senate President decide where that bill goes, but we're going to assume that this gets referred to a committee. Well, it'll get to a committee. Sometimes it's referred to a committee that never meets, really, like a calendar and printing committee or something. So the bill is referred to committee, and at that point, the committee chair, who again is appointed by the Speaker or the President, has a decision to make. Is there going to be a bill hearing on it? And a hearing is simply a time when proponents of the bill, so supporters of the bill, or opponents of the bill, can weigh in on the merits of it. And there's also a category called neutral, and that's just kind of more, we don't care either way. We just want to help you understand a couple of things about the legislation. Maybe an entity just can't lobby or take a stance, but they can provide helpful data. So the committee chair decides whether or not there's going to be a bill hearing. Then there's another decision point. You can have the most beautifully crafted bill hearing. You get, well, we saw this when I was in office. You see like 125 pieces of proponent testimony on a bill like Medicaid expansion, and then 4 opponents. So it could be well orchestrated, great data, great storytelling, compelling participation from voters around the state. But that doesn't mean that a bill has to be worked. That's a decision of the committee chair. So let's assume that a bill is going to be worked. When a bill is worked, that means in committee, lawmakers are proposing amendments to it. So I like to think of amendments like tracked changes and comments on a Word document. And so generally speaking, members of the committee need to have their amendments developed ahead of time by working with a reviser's office. And then they show up, and then nobody sees them until they're ready to share them, which can be a tough process, to be totally honest. It is the opposite of the process that I am familiar with as a designer, where you put stuff on a wall and you let everybody weigh in on it and you critique it, and more minds make for a better outcome. So let's just assume the committee works the bill. They make all the amendments they want, and then the bill, then there's a motion to pass it out of the committee. Let's assume it passes out of committee. The next question mark before it goes to the full chamber is, before it goes to the full chamber is, does the majority leader of that chamber want to even work the bill? Again, same thing. You can have a bill that has abundant support, but maybe for some reason the majority leader doesn't want to run it. Reasons might include, if you get a bill on the floor and it might be germane to an issue that the majority doesn't want, then that means it's going to force all kinds of amendments and other things that could look bad from a PR perspective, or it could delay something or complicate things, or make it amendable to other things. So that's why sometimes you won't see certain bills move forward. Again, I think a good example would be Medicaid expansion. There are plenty of really great health bills out there, like for instance, one that would fix an eligibility error for the children's health insurance program in Kansas. But because the part of the statutes that it references also is the same part where Medicaid is referenced, then it is germane to Medicaid expansion, and then that could facilitate all kinds of floor debate about Medicaid expansion. That's only one example. So let's say that passes the full chamber. You get the constitutional majority. We're going to pretend it's the House. You get 63 votes in the House. And just to be clear, there are essentially two votes that happen. There's an initial vote that doesn't have to be a recorded vote. And then typically the next day, the chamber reconvenes for final action on those bills. And that's when you'll see a recorded vote on something. So let's say it passes the House, then we go to the Senate side and do this process all over again. It has to get referred to a committee. That chair has to decide to have a hearing. That chair has to decide to work it. The majority leader has to decide to run the bill. Let's assume all that happens. Then if the Senate made any changes, whether in committee or in the full chamber, if they made any changes to the House bill, then both chambers have to get together to work out their differences, to reconcile changes. And that's what we call a conference committee. And the conference committee is made up of 6 lawmakers. So it's made up of 4 Republicans and 2 Democrats. And so you'll have the chair and vice chair of the Senate side, representing the Senate side, and then let me use my words. You have you have the chair and vice chair are Republicans, and then the ranking member of that conference committee would be a Democrat. Same on the House side. And what's interesting about a conference committee is you have to conference on a bill, but I'm just going to assume I'm calling it magic. Magically, and under House rules or joint rules, you can bundle together other bills that are relevant to that subject area into a conference committee report. And a conference committee report is just kind of a special form of a bill. I like to think of this stage kind of like working with AT&T or Midco or something like that, where you really only want phone, but they're like, we're going to give you internet and whatever. You're going to get the modem with it too. So you're bundling together various content. That could be great in some regards because maybe bills didn't get a hearing, maybe they only pass through one chamber. So there's some good ideas that we're running out of time. So let's put them in here. But other times it could be legislation that a good chunk of people wouldn't support. And so what you end up doing, once the conference committee passes a conference committee report, it goes back to the respective chambers. So each chamber runs the exact same bill, but at this point of the process, the conference committee can't be amended. So all lawmakers can do is vote yes or no on it. And you might find yourself in this situation where there's 3 really terrific bills and 1 really terrible bill, and you have to decide whether or not you're willing to vote no against it based on the bad bill. This is often where we see a lot of politics come into play. You have 3 really good bills and the 1 really bad thing, and then people during election season would say, whatever, John Wilson supports this or doesn't support this. It's because I didn't want the 1 bad thing. That was bad enough for me. But anyway, so that's where it gets really complicated. And this moves very quickly too. So conference committees can meet for 5 minutes and then disperse. And it can happen late at night. So that's why people who are in the building are really important if they can get that information out to the public. But it's also why we push for people to do their work in the daytime when more of the public can see it. All right. Lindsay, I know I'm running a little long. I apologize. I'm almost done. So let's say we got a conference committee report. Everybody agrees on it. It passes with the required majorities in both chambers. Then it goes to the governor in the yellow boxes down there. The governor can act on the bill. Again, 3 choices. The governor can sign it, the governor can veto it, or the governor can let it become law without their signature. And so there's just a certain number of days that have to pass, and without a signature, it's assumed to become law. So somebody would maybe do that if they're like fine with it, but they don't want to put their name on it. And then, but if there's a veto, then it has to go back to the chambers, and then there has to be an active decision whether or not there's going to be an attempt to override that veto. So lots of decision points along the way. Let's just say there was no veto, or the veto override was successful, then the bill becomes law. Boo bam sharam, usually effective July 1. That's when most laws are going to begin. Questions about any of that? That's a lot. Okay, let's keep going. But Lindsay, it would be helpful. How much time do I have left?
I mean, easily 15 minutes, but we're flexible. So
Okay.
hopefully everyone is finding this as informative as I am. But please,
Yeah,
please
can we
continue.
can we do a quick pause for questions and I can have a sip of coffee?
Yes, of course. Panel members, any questions? And I think actually our chair might have joined, so I might recuse my role and turn that back over.
Okay.
So not it, huh, Lizzie? Lizzie, thank you. So thank you for holding down the fort. And John, it's good to see you
Likewise.
again. And so thank you again for everything. And so if you all don't know who I am, I'm Cornelia Stevens, Executive Director of Top Ray Learning Center and also the chair of the recommendations panel. And so I think we're opening it for questions for John. Does anybody have any questions regarding the information shared so far?
This is Marita. This is not a question, but I do really appreciate your presentation about the Kansas legislature because I don't really know anything about it much. So thank you.
So this is your first step. A couple of years, maybe you're running for office. Just saying.
Any other questions or comments?
And so we can dive in further, and then if this provides more time for questions, I would love to hear them.
Go for it.
Okay, so Lindsay, I don't know if there's an effective way to dive into the legislative website, like a walkthrough right now. So we can hold off, I think, unless you just feel like doing a drive into the website, but.
I'm happy to steer and you can direct me, or you're welcome to
let's
take
do
the
that real
screen share.
quick. Let's do that real quick. So I want to show you the legislature's website because it is a treasure trove of information, and it is a necessary tool to be comfortable with if you want to engage with the legislative process. If you don't have the time for that, this is the opportunity for my shameless plug that Kansas Action for Children produces a weekly newsletter that recaps what happened in the legislature as it relates to kids and families. So if those are the types of issues you care about most, then we can tell you where things are at every step of the process.
And I can definitely share that link out with panel members, John, after the meeting. I'll make sure to share that in case anyone's interested in signing up.
Okay, great. So I think for purposes today, let's go to the legislator tab. So the key thing to know about the legislative website is everything is hyperlinked and you could easily go down a rabbit hole. Let's go to the House roster. And so let's do Representative Will Carpenter, District 75 there. So so Lindsay's clicking on these links. And so this is a great starting point. I guess the better starting point would be on the left navigation bar. You'll see a Find Your Legislature. If you don't know who your lawmaker is, you can click that. But let's just assume your lawmaker is Will Carpenter. You live in the El Dorado area. You can go here, and this tells you a lot about Representative Carpenter, who was reelected, by the way, and will likely be in a very important position as it relates to health and the budget and other things. So a couple of things. You'll see a district map where it says District 75 Republican. There's a map there that you can see what communities are in that make up his legislative district. And a legislative district is roughly 19,000 people, by the way. So you have that, and then you'll have vote records for prior years. Then you'll see the committees that this lawmaker is on. You'll see Representative Carpenter is on quite a few. Some of these are interim committees, meaning they happen from May until December. Others are what they call standing committees. So they are kind of regular session committees. So we can see that. You can see on the right-hand side below Representative Carpenter's picture, really important contact information for not only at the Capitol, but also at home. Then you can see all the bills that Representative Carpenter has lent his name to down there for quick reference, because this could be confusing sometimes. or maybe it's not a quick reference, kind of a cheat sheet. HB means House bill, SB means Senate bill. House bills are always going to have 4 numbers. Senate bills are going to be 2 numbers or 1 number, I guess. And then HR would be a House resolution. Then you have other CCR would be a conference committee report, which is again that magical bill created by elves in conference committee that has some special qualities to it. So then if we go back up, Lindsay, let's just click on one of those committees. Let's do what if we did the, scroll down a little bit. Let's do Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development. That's one that meets daily. And Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development, what last year was one of those committees that actually dealt with childcare. That's the bill, that's where the Office of Early Childhood bill went through. So who knows if that's where childcare, early learning related activity will be this coming year, but we'll see. So again, lots of information on this committee site. So you'll see there's a way to contact the committee assistant, which helps organize testimony. You'll see minutes and testimony documents from the committees. You'll see all the bills that are currently sponsored by that committee or bills that are in that committee. So again, bill sponsored by a committee means it doesn't have an individual lawmaker's name on it. It just means it has the committee's name on it. The reason that happens, by the way, is sometimes an individual lawmaker's political party or maybe their reputation would mean somebody doesn't want to move a bill forward. So let's just say when I was in office, people hated me. They didn't like me. I was a jerk to everybody. Nobody would sign on to that bill and nobody would want my bill to go forward. But if I had it be a committee on taxation bill, it doesn't have my name on it. It maybe is more comfortable spot for people to show their support for. So then you'll see the committee structure that I showed you visually on those slides on the right side, plus all the committee members listed out there, and they're all hyperlinked, and you can learn all the things you want to learn about things. Then if you look under there, you'll see staff. The staff are nonpartisan staff. So as I mentioned, there's the Office of Reviser of Statutes. Those are the attorneys. The Legislative Research Department is another nonpartisan agency in the legislature, and that is where lawmakers turn to for research on topics, and they staff these committees because of their subject matter expertise. And then committee assistants, like office assistants, are going to be part-time staff, typically only there for the committee days if they're in interim session, or they are only there January to May. So lots of information here to soak in. If you have questions about it, you can certainly reach out to me afterwards, but this is where you go to find out what testimony was presented, to find out where bills are in a legislative process. Let's actually click on a bill. Let's do SB 96. That's actually that is the Office of Early Childhood bill. So this is a great way to show you that process that I identified earlier. You'll see right now, if you go down to bill history, it begins with the most recent thing, and then there are tabs to show you the beginning of it. But this is where you could see the windiness of the legislative process. Sometimes bills change names or change numbers, or they get new names like substitute for House bill, whatever. So this is where you can see vote counts. You can see notes on what the bill is. So if you don't have the interest in reading a full bill, if you go to the top, Lindsay, you'll see bill versions. There's documents. So supplemental notes is what we would call a plain language explainer of what the bill does. Then you'll see, yeah. So this is the explainer, and you can quickly see it as an explainer because there's not. It doesn't look like bill language. Whereas Lindsay, if we go back to the bill as introduced, or we can whichever one you want to use.
Which one would I click on?
Let's go as introduced under documents. Go down the bottom.
I see. Thank you.
So this is what an actual bill looks like. And if you're curious, this is only a half of an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper that we're talking about. So they're relatively tiny. Bills will have these numbers going down the side. That allows for easy reference for amendments. So you could say, I want to have an amendment to strike line 10 or to change whatever word on this line. So this is what a bill looks like. more complicated than a supplemental note. Going through a lot here. So let's go up here. Current sponsor and then original sponsor. You can do all those carets there. So you'll see this. Yeah, this is interesting. So this was originally a bill that was requested by introduction by Senator Tyson, but it was a committee bill. So the sponsor was the Committee on Assessment and Taxation, but then the new bill, the House sub, is the House Committee on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development. So if you followed along last year, you likely would know that the governor's office, I believe, or maybe somebody within the Democratic Party requested introduction of the Office of Early Childhood bill. But because of the legislative process, the contents of that bill were moved into a different bill. And so it gets really hard to follow along where things are. So I just feel like I've overwhelmed everybody and kind of maybe minimize the amount of people that are going to run for office now after this. So that's the legislative website. Treasure trove of information. The last thing I'll say is at the top, audio, video. When you are at the top by the search bar, whenever you're tired of watching funny dog videos after you're recovering from the election, you can watch the legislature. So all of the committees and all of the floor activity are streamed live on a YouTube channel, and they are all recorded. So if you can't make them live, you can watch them after the fact. This is a really important tool that didn't exist with any regularity back when I was serving starting in 2013. There was only a couple of rooms that had video, but now because we have video in every committee room and on the in every committee room, that allows for people to provide testimony by Zoom, which is really helpful. That helps with transparency. It helps with greater civic engagement too. Okay, so that's the legislative website. I'm gonna wrap it up in with that. I think that I have some more content, but I don't know that we're there yet. I mean, I'll follow the will of the body. I want to pause for questions. The only remaining content I have was to just give you a sense of what a committee room looks like and what it might feel like to provide testimony, and then give you some pointers on engaging with lawmakers. Let's do it. Let's do some, we'll dive in quickly then. We can go past this. I'm going to make this really quick and almost too simplistic, and I apologize. I think it's really helpful to know what you're stepping into. That certainty, I think, is a nice adult learning principle too. So when you all are ready to provide testimony in the legislature, this is what a typical committee room looks like. So the picture on the left, that's you sitting in the audience looking at the legislators. In the middle of the table, in the middle of that U shape, that's where the nonpartisan staff sit. So that list of people on that legislative website page, you have some attorneys from the revisor's office, researchers from legislative research, and then the committee assistant. Around that is where you have lawmakers. There are assigned seating that's done by the committee chair. And so people are always going to sit in a regular spot. Looking at on the right side, that just generally shows you how lawmakers are going to be oriented. So the chair in the middle, the vice chair is going to be on the right side of the chair, and the ranking member from the minority party on the left side. And then you'll see a podium and mic in the center at the end of that table. That's where conferees, which are the people who are providing testimony, come up and talk. And then you'll see that there are television screens in there for if there are slides or other things as a part of a hearing. And then you'll see relatively small space for engagement. So that's a typical committee room. And those are House meets in them and Senate meets in them. Let's move on. So again, this is for anybody who wants to see what it's going to feel like when you're actually at the microphone talking to lawmakers. And there are some kind of formalities or customs that I thought you all might want to be familiar with. We can go to the next slide, Lindsay. First, some formalities and etiquette. I would dress to meet the cultural expectations of the legislature. So you're going to see most lawmakers in suits or professional business attire. So I would, at a minimum, try to match that. Then also, typically, you're going to want to address people as representative or senator. And important to know, when providing legislative testimony, you always want to give deference to the chair. So don't speak until you've been recognized by the chair. Even if even other lawmakers have to ask the chair for time to ask a question. And then you might even respond to that lawmaker's question with, thank you, Representative, or thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd love to answer that question. So there's some formality with formal legislative testimony, verbal testimony. So let's move to the second item, the middle card there, written versus verbal. You might have lots of great ideas and good data to say why a bill needs to pass or not pass. It's totally acceptable to just put that in writing on letterhead or whatever format the committee requires and submit that, and the lawmakers will get copies of that and they'll read it, and that is perfectly fine. Maybe you don't want to open yourself up to speaking in public. So you can do written, but you can also do verbal. Verbal requires more, a little bit more work. You obviously have to show up on Zoom or in person, but you still have to provide written documentation of your verbal remarks for the record. And typically committees require that you submit testimony several days in advance of the actual committee here, the bill hearing. Responding to questions, I would just say sometimes you may not know the answer to the question, and don't lie to lawmakers. Tell them you'll get back to them, and that actually is an opportunity because it creates one more touch point with a lawmaker. But just make sure you do get back with them. Number 4, the plum color in the bottom left. Think beyond the hearing. I like to think of this kind of like surround sound. You can watch a movie with regular sound and it's fine, but it's a richer experience when you've got speakers behind you and below you and around you. So remember that the bill hearing is just one instance to provide your perspective on something. You can do work ahead of time and you can do work after the fact to continue influencing lawmakers. So, and you can do it back in your home district send an email to them or reach out to see if they'd be willing to get together for coffee. So just think beyond the hearing. There's a lot of work and formality in the bill hearing itself, which provides some limitations. So you have fewer restrictions if you do it outside the context of a bill hearing. And then finally, prepare for pushback too. So lawmakers may have strong opinions about something, and some of them understand, many of them are familiar with the regular lobbyist and will probably punch a little harder, if you will, not physically, literally, punch a little harder at known lobbyists in the building, but people they know are new to the scene or who seem nervous, they are likely going to respond accordingly. But we have also seen lawmakers get triggered by certain language or get offended by implications of testimony. And so just be prepared for all types of reactions. All right, let's go to the next ones, Lindsay. Meeting with lawmakers. This is going to be real quick. We can go to the next slide. Similar format to the last couple of slides. So number 1, where meetings happen. Meetings can happen in a lawmaker's office. They can happen in the hallway, often happen in the hallway. They can happen in an elevator. They can happen back in a lawmaker's district. So just be prepared for meetings to be in a variety of places. Second thing, be prepared for time constraints. I always thought of my time in the legislature kind of like being in a mix between college and high school. So you have your class schedule, and you have some in-between time. And for some lawmakers, they might have a total of an hour between either committees and the floor or between another committee meeting. So be prepared for 15-minute time blocks. Don't go in thinking you're going to get an hour. Don't go in thinking you're getting 30 minutes. Be prepared for like 15 minutes. And be prepared also for the setting of a lawmaker's office if that's where you're meeting. If most House members share office space with another lawmaker. So it's kind of like having a roommate. So you could be there talking about the value of streamlining programs and services for early childhood, and the desk next to you is talking about noxious weeds. And you just have to be willing to deal with that. Not a lot of privacy at times. Then move into number 3, be curious and kind. I think I think it can be helpful that the first time you talk with a lawmaker, it's not about telling them what to do. It's about listening and learning what they care about and or how they feel about a certain issue. And then you can respond accordingly, and maybe not in that moment, maybe come back to it later. Number 4, be helpful. Just because it doesn't matter what your title is or whatever, your lived experience is enough for you to be there talking with lawmakers. So if you're a provider and you've got decades of experience providing care to kids, let them know that you have that experience and you'd like to help be a resource to them as they're making decisions on that topic. And then finally, think beyond the conversation, similar to the one on legislative testimony. A follow-up thank you, subscribe to their newsletter, respond to their newsletter when you see something that was important to you, but think beyond the conversation, because I think it becomes easier to ask lawmakers to do something or to support or oppose something when they have a relationship with you. And I know it can be hard or intimidating to build a relationship with somebody who has a fancy title and who has some positional power, but lean into the relationship side of this work. And I think that's it. Yeah, that is it. We covered a lot, gang.
But very helpful information. Just this, again, the whole legislative process can be confusing. So thank you for walking through and sharing knowledge for people, especially if they've not had the opportunity to kind of be immersed in all of that. So now with the new additional information that was shared, does anybody have any questions or comments or whatnot for John? I have none. All right. Well, again, thank you, John, for coming and sharing information. His contact information is there. I can tell you personally that he will respond, and he's always open to giving feedback. Take him up on the offer and reading the weekly newsletter with updates, because I choose to allow him to wordsmith everything and give me the updates of what's gone on, and read that on a weekly basis for my updates. And so it's actually a really helpful resource if you're curious about what's happening in the legislature relating to the work that we do. So definitely, if that's not something that you subscribe to, Lindsay said that she'll send the link out to that, and I would definitely encourage you to do that. So thank you again, John.
Thank you for having me. I hope everybody has a great weekend. And thanks for your service with the group too.
Thank you.
All right, so next on the agenda, we have the opportunity to hear from our work groups and any updates or things that have happened since our last meeting, and new discoveries or conversations or anything like that you'd like to share. So first, we'll hear from spokesperson for family-friendly workplaces.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dana Book. I'm a training specialist with the Kansas Children's Service League, and I'll be speaking ever so briefly about our last 30 days. So it's conference season, right? So I know Brenda's been to multiple conferences. I've been to multiple, and consequently, we have not met since the last meeting, although we've had some back and forth over email to keep things moving along. We are essentially where we were 30 days ago, although we mentioned, we're working on the recognition piece of family-friendly workplace, or the designation. We have that in place, and now I know Brenda has talked to some folks in North Carolina about how they do theirs. We are working to meet with them to kind of hash out some more ideas, and then we've identified several employers that have done the survey and put policy into place. So we'll work with them to kind of pilot what this looks like. So that's what we'll talk about for a little bit after today's meeting, and then we'll schedule another meeting between now and the next time this group meets. And I will say, you know what, I'll go ahead. I was going to save this for a bright spot, but Cornelia, I'll leave it up to you if you want me to save it, or I can go ahead and throw this out now. But
Go ahead and throw it out.
I'll do that since my mic is on, right? So there is a new coalition being formed and put into motion. It is called Paid Leave for All Kansans. It is, Lindsay, if you want to type this down, it is paidleaveks.org. And it's in its beginning stages, but it's a coalition to drive paid leave work, which falls directly under their purview of family-friendly workplaces. So follow that link. You can sign up for the newsletter. You can join the coalition. I think we meet here next week, if I remember right. But so that's a bright spot and other things that are going on. So I'm open for questions if there are any.
If none, thank you, Dana, for sharing. Next, we'll have a spokesperson for exit interviews.
Good morning, everybody. This is Stephanie Wiggins with the Exit Interviews Work Group. Last meeting, we talked about the logistics of developing that survey that would help to identify some of those concerns for the wider variety of childcare providers. For instance, it's easy to talk about compensation as being one of those reasons for leaving the workforce, but we really want to drill down and talk about what about compensation and or what specific changes could be made with that. Talking about what Dana just introduced with the paid leave for all Kansans would be one of those opportunities that we could really talk about. So we're also looking at thinking about those strategies that are necessary to ensure a high response rate. We have found that there are several survey versions that are available, but one of those concerns is the response rate to those surveys and getting more information to be able to gather that data. So we're also looking at bringing in more partners to our upcoming meetings in an attempt to help get that widespread attempt for collaboration from a lot of different organization representatives. So overall, we're making pretty good progress.
Questions for Stephanie? No, thank you for that update. I have a spokesperson for mental health supports.
Hi, everyone. This is Marie Trikel. I'll speak for the Mental Health Supports Work Group. We are still figuring out our roles for sure. Schedules just haven't quite allowed everyone to attend both the past couple meetings. But we have Stephanie Parks visiting today, who is going to give us information about the well-being information from the workforce study. And we have some updated information on the preschool development grant work, and that's going to inform and affect some of our next steps. We do have ideas that we're going to be discussing today, and we're going to make some forward progress for sure.
Next, spokesperson for targeted journey recruitment.
Hi, this is Amy Gottschammer with Google's of Learning Child Development Center in Lawrence, representing the group. And between our meeting last month and now with a variety of email conversations, our group sort of started talking about taking a deeper look at the use of DCF subsidies, not just for Kansas children and families, but that we believe that the subsidies are not only positive for Kansans, but also good for childhood providers or early childhood providers. So as we focus on the recruitment and retention piece, we can work on promoting those relationships between the eligible families in DCF and providers in DCF. So looking at kind of the benefits, such as that being a DCF provider can make a provider eligible for certain financial opportunities that others may not be. Being a DCF provider can help provider fill a spot when a private pay family may not be forthcoming. Also, there might be federal opportunities for additional finances, like, for example, through the CACFP Child and Adult Care Food Program, so that if a provider meets certain levels of providing care to free and reduced lunch eligible children, that they can receive reimbursements for food costs. And although this program in particular, because it's federal and has its own challenges, it still can potentially provide additional financial resources to providers. So I did reach out to Emily at Kansas Action for Children, and she said that they were already looking at strategies to increase childcare providers' participation in DCF. In fact, they were participating in the Methodist Health Ministries Fund, hosted a webinar last month about providers' perceptions of childcare subsidies in Kansas. And I'm not going to get into all of that. You guys can reach out to them and find out the results of that. But the main takeaway for us was that providers are underutilizing the resource. And so, of course, the childcare subsidies has recently increased, but more providers need to be aware of these changes. Currently, only 40% of childcare providers are DCF providers. So the promotion of DCF childcare subsidies for family and providers is going on, but we're thinking, what can we do? Look at other options for how to specifically reach and recruit providers to help them understand in what ways DCF can help and support them. So that's kind of low-hanging fruit. That's one of the first things we were looking at. One of our next steps is to invite conversations from KSDE's career and technical education to learn more about programs and opportunities for those interested in a career in NEC. So specifically, we reached out to invite Taylor Spangler with the KSDE CTA to our December meeting to talk about high school recruits and the programs that are offered them. We're thinking about trying to determine what data might be useful and or available to our group, such as the number of students that are enrolled in apprenticeship programs, whether or not they're paid apprenticeships, how many students gain employment through those programs. So that's kind of where we are, the information we're looking to gain at this point, and who we've reached out to and who we'll hope will join us for our next meeting. So that's where we are at the moment.
Very good.
Any questions?
Last, may I have a spokesperson for System Progress Communication?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly France Langford, and I am reporting out for the System Progress Communications. We spent our last meeting looking at our goals and really trying to work through, are we going to have individual committee members divide and conquer, or are there certain goals that we feel strongly about working on together? We also did have started our work on an environmental scan to look at what systems are already in process across the state, particularly communications or system communications that are working well and are statewide, both from a perspective of what successes have they had and also what challenges or lessons learned. Speaking to Sarah's comment earlier about Kansas has a lot of data and a lot of resources, but sometimes the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. We really feel like our group is trying to work to understand what and synthesize in some capacity what is already going on in the state and where families are successful, families, or I should say early childhood individuals are successful in accessing those resources, or where there is trouble. And along those same lines, looking at data in the same, looking at data along those same lines, what types of data do we have? Where are we successful in gathering data? What exists, what isn't working, and how all of that can impact the early childhood landscape across Kansas. So at this meeting, we'll have a report out from some of the individuals that were either doing some research in those areas or connecting with other groups already doing the work. Any questions for us? Thank you.
Good to hear about the progress that is being made already, and just I know we're still trying to figure out like the lay of the land and what we want to focus on, but it seems like there's already been some meaningful conversations and even guests coming to present or speak to people and whatnot, and so we love that. So if your committee is working on something and you know that there is another entity across the state that is also working on a similar thing, please, it's okay for you to invite them to your meeting, so that you can kind of share resources and knowledge or whatnot, because I think that we don't want to duplicate efforts. We want to support what's going on, and so love hearing that part as well. So next we have the opportunity for you to share bright spots. Dana's already shared a bright spot regarding the new paid leave website. Does anybody else have any bright spots that you'd like to share regarding your organization or things that are happening within your community?
Cornelia, I have one. It's Tabitha. So at Kansas Parent Information Resource Center, we partner with KSDE and we provide monthly trainings on the ASQ for providers or healthcare providers, any family-facing professionals that are using the ASQ. And I just wanted to remind people of that service. It's been really helpful to the people who have joined. We do 3-hour sessions, usually on a Friday morning. So if you have anybody that you need to send to get trained in using or scoring or talking to families about the ASQ, we'd be happy to have you on our next call in January. Just look at the KSDE website for more information.
Jarvis.
Good morning, Jarvis here. I just wanted to share over the past week. So from a recommendation that came from our child care system improvement team, we put together a series, planning on doing a series of roundtables across the state to get provider feedback and really community feedback, public feedback of how the licensing program can be better, what's going well in the communities, what's not, and how we can help, the system in general through childcare licensing. We had our first roundtable on Tuesday evening. It was in Abilene. We actually held it at a childcare center there. We had a really good turnout, really good conversation. So we're just really excited about that. We got some good things to take back with us to look at, bring back to the group. We're planning on having, I think, 6 more of those. It will be over the course of the next year. I think we're going to do them every other month. So I think the next one will be in January. We haven't decided on a location yet, but yeah, just wanted to put that out there. We did have a flyer out and we'll continue to put those flyers out as those come up. But yeah, we had a really good turnout and it was really good for us. Got us energized, and it's always energizing to get out and talk with the public and just everyone that's curious and interested in early childhood. So just wanted to put that plug out there.
Thank you. Any other bright spots or information that you'd like to share?
Sorry, as the technical Zoom host, I can't raise my own hand. So sorry to not raise my hand and wait for you to call on me. I just wanted to say thank you to Jarvis for that update. And I will, once we have information about the next roundtable with all the details, I'll make sure to share that out with everyone on the panel so that if you are able to attend in person, you'll have that information. But I was also asked to share sort of a bright spot or upcoming information from Christy Wyckoff, who had to step off before we wrapped up today. She let me know ahead of time. The Children's Cabinet will be opening the Early Childhood Block Grant open RFP on Monday, November 18th. So just want to let everyone know that that's upcoming. We'll make sure to share a link to find out more information. If any of your organizations or anyone in your community might want to know about this opportunity for grant funding. The purpose of this funding is to provide high quality early childhood care and education services for children birth through kindergarten and their families to meet early childhood outcomes. So there's more information on the Children's Cabinet website. I'll make sure to share a link to that, but it is an open RFP. So take a look and share that with others in your communities if that would be of interest. And if you have any questions, Christy Wyckoff at the Children's Cabinet is absolutely the best person to reach out to, but you can also reach out to me and I'll help connect you to resources or to Christy if needed as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Lindsay. Marites?
This is Maritas. I'd like to share that the Kansas State School for the Blind, we are going to have a daycare preschool in addition to our preschool enrichment program. And so we received our licensing, and we will be publishing flyers and information and dates, rates, and hours of operation pretty soon.
Very cool. Any other bright spots? Okay, if none, please remember that there is a post-meeting survey that Lindsay is going to send out, give you an opportunity to provide feedback as we plan and prepare for future meetings. The next Early Child Recommendations Panel meeting is on December the 20th at 9 o'clock. I am curious about the holiday and how that kind of works out for everybody. So I don't know, Lindsay, if we want to talk through that or not, but I don't know if anybody has conflict or anything with that being, Christmas week or, holiday week or whatnot. So I don't know, but it is as of right now scheduled for December 20th at 9 o'clock. And then our next Children's Cabinet and Trust Fund meeting is December 6th at 9 o'clock. And that is live streamed on the Children's Cabinet website at kschildrenscabinet.org. I'm sorry, but on the YouTube page, which you can link to from there, but go to the YouTube page if you want to be able to see that. And then all of the resources and whatnot for the meeting are on the website. We will have a 10-minute break. So we're going to call it 10:25. And at 10:35, you can come back to this link and there'll be breakout rooms where you can then go to your work groups and that we don't have to necessarily meet there, but Lindsay will keep them open for you. Thank you all for the meeting today. Lindsay, thank you again for holding down the fort while I finished another presentation meeting. And I look forward to seeing you all next month in the December meeting, and have a great weekend. Take care, everyone.